Hello everyone. It's been some time since I've been streaming. I have wanted to allow for uh, other voices to come forward in this time. I'm going to adjust my display here. It's been a long time. Let me try to get my game set up correctly. Um, there has been a lot going on in our world that has needed more attention rather than my stream, so I've been giving some time to that rather than playing. And those issues are still very important to me, so I may take time off to give more room for those voices a time. Hi Merrick, how's it going? But I did want to share a little bit about Icewind Dale. It's been something I've wanted to share for a while. It's a bit of a strange day to do that because today is the day that Neverwinter has released their expansion to Avernus. They now allow you to drive war machines and go to other cities. So someday I should probably do that. But for now, I'm going to stick to Icewind Dale. And I'm doing this because of the announcement that came out around what we are seeing with Rime of the Frostmaiden. You may have heard about this. It's the upcoming product that we are going to see from Wizards. Wizards once per year likes to release an official big adventure, and that kind of brings a lot of fanfare to it, a lot of attention, a lot of narrative look, and that's exactly what's going on here, is that they're really working on this book. I am very excited about it, but before we do that, I want to take a look at some of the history of this product, of how we got to Icewind Dale and what it is that brought us to this place. Why did we end up at Rime of the Frostmaiden? That's a lot of what these streams are going to try to do. So let's start with the beginning for me and really for all of the line, which are these books by R.A. Salvatore. These books, The Crystal Shard, then Streams of Silver, The Halfling's Gem, really laid out the groundwork for Icewind Dale. And you can find interviews both on the official D&D podcast and elsewhere where Salvatore talks about how he came up with these ideas and spun it even at the moment of speaking on the phone with representatives of Wizards describing what this was about and where to base it. And it was largely because he was, hey Richard, nice to see you in chat. He was forced to kind of prove that he could come up with a cool story, and he'd been told that all the areas that he thought would be cool for a story were already taken. They're either current plans for them, or someone was making a product, or they just were too rich to allow somebody to write a novel about them. And so he kind of made up this whole story about Drizzt Do'Urden and Menzoberranzan and his house and all of these things, and then just got to work when he got approval. And because this was an area of the Forgotten Realms that was not very detailed, he got to detail it. And so a lot of what we have comes from these initial 3 books. How successful was this? Well, look at that. Those are not actually all of the books. It just was a quick image search, and these are a number of the books. I recently, as my son began to enjoy these books and read through the first 3, he said, gee, you know, how many are there? And oh my God, I thought I owned most of them. That was not true. Turns out there are a good number of them, and there are some other ones after this as well. So this really told the story not just of Icewind Dale, but of Drizzt and the companions, the dwarf Bruenor, the barbarian Wolfgar, Catti-brie, who grew up with the dwarves, Regis the halfling, all of these. Hey Grant, nice to see you in chat. So we end up with an enormous amount of information, not just about Icewind Dale, but about the Underdark, and about these companions, and their tales are told in all of these different novels. The popularity of the novels express themselves in countless number of ways, from how the ranger class was shaped over time to be more Drizzt-like, to barbarians, any number of it, and the things that he touched on in the novels also were pretty interesting, such as things like, you're on a stream, Grant, roll. Things as, with the Crystal Shard, it talks a lot about the different barbarian tribes, and I think forced people to look at, well, what does it mean to have barbarians in your area of the world, and I think took the discourse very far. It's very much along the lines of what we're discussing these days on how to best take these types of stories and move them forward. It's not done perfectly, but it's been a gradient, ever improving. So then we've got a really, really big influence of mine and for many people as well, and those are a series of video games for Icewind Dale. I played these things constantly, the Heart of Winter expansion and Icewind Dale 2. A lot of people grew up on Baldur's Gate video game. This was where I spent my time. I never actually got to touch it because I just spent so much time on these. They were just phenomenal and also expanded the world somewhat. Not as much as the novels, but still did. Then we'd have to talk about the Legacy of the Crystal Shard once we get to D&D Next, where this really comes into creating a storyline that is updated with the ideas that had been around before, and made it a big playable area during the D&D Next Sundering storyline. So if you don't know, D&D Next was the prequel to 5th edition. When they were moving from 4th edition to 5th edition, they had a sort of playtest version called D&D Next. And they created adventures for them, which you could play in 4th edition and 5th edition, or in D&D Next. And so that was a lot of fun. So we can see here what this adventure looked like, and it's pretty cool. I'm gonna swap here so you can see the camera. There were a number of neat things. That one is you had a version that came to stores, and this came with a bunch of cool things, like a really neat map, which we'll show later. But it also had, super cool, this map of the 10 towns that came in it with a super cool battle map poster. It's really hard to kind of show it all on one screen, but it's an amazing product, really fun for being free for running the game, one of my favorites. And then the product itself, the Legacy of the Crystal Shard, that came with DM screen and all kinds of really neat pieces. And let's talk a little bit about what it does for the game itself, what these products did. Legacy of the Crystal Shard took the idea that was in the Drizzt Do'Urden first book, which is that of a wizard that sort of unwittingly, unexpectedly comes into power through an artifact, and it advances that storyline. It'll be very interesting to see where we go with Rime of the Frostmaiden, because this world, has a number of aspects that came in both the Drizzt series around the Crystal Shard artifact, and then in Legacy Crystal Shard, where you have these fragments of the Crystal Shard that are corrupting the area and are creating corruption of the ice itself. That should be really interesting to see how that comes across in Rime of the Frostmaiden. One of the big parts of Rime of the Frostmaiden is certainly going to be Auril, who is a goddess. We'll talk more about her and her influence. She was a part of Legacy of Crystal Shard as well. So we'll get to see how that is. There's, by the way, also an alt cover that looks really, really neat for Rime of the Frostmaiden. I will probably buy both of them because that's what I always do. Let's do a little geography here. So the Sword Coast is the place where, when we think of the Forgotten Realms in 5e, it's where the focus often comes. Though we end up in Chult, we end up in all kinds of different places as well, from even the Nine Hells. But we are going to go to the far north of it. It's, I guess, still technically the Sword Coast, but it's the most northwestern part of the Forgotten Realms that we usually see. Yeah, that cover is pretty cool. And so in this, we see Neverwinter here on the map. Towards the southern middle area. There is quite a distance involved here. I actually meant to pull up the scale and I didn't, but it's quite a ways travel between Neverwinter and Luskan. So south of this map is where you'd have Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate and all those kinds of areas. Luskan is the northernmost major city here. It's a city of pirates. We talked about it in, I think, the second stream I did, where I talked about the Dread Ring. And no, sorry, the second one was about Valindra Shadowmantle, which had been a viewer question. We talked about her past, which took her to Luskan. That was the Feywild episode. So from Luskan, you can head north on a variety of small tracks to get up to the area that you can see there labeled 10 Towns. That 10 Towns area is then near Kelvin's Cairn, a very tall peak. You have the glacier to the north and east there. You can see how huge that is. It's enormous. You have the Spine of the World Mountains that abut against the glacier, and 10 towns and separate sort of the south from that northern frozen area. The southern areas of those mountains tend to be full of orcs. We have the Kingdom of Many Arrows orcs that are there. The 10 towns themselves we'll take a look at in closer view in a second, and you have the Sea of Moving Ice. So the Sea of Moving Ice, I detailed that in, I think, the 3rd stream. It's a pretty fun area. This area saw an expansion that was done for Storm King's Thunder for Neverwinter, even though Storm King's Thunder didn't put a huge amount of emphasis on this area. So the Sea of Moving Ice is just kind of all these enormous icebergs that move around, and some people live on them as islands, including tons of frost giants. All right, so that's the Sword Coast, but now let's look at the Icewind Dale and 10 Towns area. So we're zooming in on that 10 Town zone. We have Kelvin's Cairn, which is the big, huge peak. Don't mind the red arrow and the blood spots. This was a handout map for Legacy of the Crystal Shard. But here you can see, this is probably my favorite map for sort of visualizing where the different towns come in. In the middle, you have the town of Bryn Shander, kind of where that arrow is pointing. Then you have 3 towns that are on Lac Dinashir. There are these 3 large lakes in the area. And Lac Dinashir has Caer Konig, a very large town, Caer Dineval, and East Haven. Then you can see if we go further south from East Haven towards Redwaters, around that lake you have Dugan's Hole and Goodmead, 2 towns there. And then you have 4 towns that ring Mare Dwaldon. You have Lonelywood, featured heavily in the Neverwinter game, Tourmaline, Bremen, and Targos. And so those are the 10 towns. Bryn Shander is the most important, even though it is not on one of the lakes. The reasons why the lakes are important is kind of cool because it has to do with the major industry there, other than just mercantile trade, is around knucklehead trout, known as the white gold. And what they do is they make scrimshaw out of it. Well, of course you eat it and things like that, but you take the bones and you carve it, and that is sold for a lot. It's considered to be very fine art, and a lot of people buy it, and so it's worth a lot. There are enormous fights and a lot of contention between all of the different towns over trying to get land big fish, and then also doing the carving. And so the books are full of discussions about all these fights that take place on the different lakes. And one of the hard things to do is when there is a common threat for all the 10 towns to come together and face that threat is very difficult, and much of the tension in the first Crystal Shard novel is all about Drizzt Do'Urden and Regis the Halfling and the others trying to motivate the 10 towns to come together around different threats, including the final battle of Icewind Dale. What's cool about this zone? There are a lot of cool things about it. I mean, there are really cool monsters that are in these areas, things like frost giants and frozen undead, and you have Yetis, which are really cool monsters. You have Remoras, one of my favorite monsters of all time. You have really neat things like, as part of the novel, you have this character here. This is Icing-Death, which is a dragon that was actually defeated by Wulfgar the Barbarian so that he could prove himself with a little help from Drizzt Do'Urden, just a bit. Don't tell him it was more than that. So you have all kinds of really, really super cool creatures that were there. Let's see. Here's a map of Caer Konig. And I'll bring this up because we're going to transition to the Neverwinter game. Very important. We got to do that at some point. And we're going to start in Caer Konig. So when D&D was releasing, when Neverwinter was releasing their various parts of the game, they started with the Feywild, they added Dreadring, and then they added Icewind Dale. And the base of operations is Caer Konig. So if you look at the map there, you know, they didn't go for Bryn Shander, the obvious sort of middle town, though later they did take us there as part of the Storm Giants Thunder series. They started us in Caer Dineval, which is just west of Lac Dinashir and south of Kelvin's Cairn. You can see it there under Caer Konig. So you can see here how it's arranged, looks sort of like a moon shape, has a number of docks down below, a market. Has the great tavern named Hook, Line, and Sinker. It has a competing one called the Northern Light, which does not appear in the video game. And then it has Frozen Far Expeditions, which also appears in the game. I'll talk about those a bit. But let's Oh, and let's show a bit of this. This kind of nice piece of art that I like that's in one of the Legacy of Crystal Shard books, because this kind of captures a lot of the look of Icewind Dale. So this is a hard land, right? This is, as Merrick says in chat, only madmen live in 10 towns, only mad people, right? You have to be kind of a little crazy to go here. Why would you come here? You come here because you're either crazy enough to seek opportunity. You want to raid the ancient treasures that are up here, or you want to, run super risky caravans up here and make money off the merchants, or you are running away from something. You want a new life. You want to escape your past. You're wanted. This is the kind of thing that you do to get there. Yeah, 10 towns is a lot considering how awful it is up there, as you're saying. So let's take a look at how Neverwinter does this. We're going to go with my halfling rogue in honor of Regis. I think I've already used my Drizzt lookalike a fair bit. And we're going to go into the town of Carconic. So this is where you show up. You come in on that boat over there, and there are pretty windmills. It's a really gorgeous scene. You've got the lighthouse in the distance. You can jump up on a frozen boat that people are working on. It's a pretty sweet area. And you can see something really interesting over there, straight ahead behind me, that kind of weird crystal information. We're going to talk about that for sure. But here's Carconic. We're going to walk around my Hellhound mount. Keeps the ice at bay. And you've got all these different market areas that are here. And one of the things that we're going to see right off the bat is this shrine. And if we look at it, I think it doesn't tell me any information. It does when you're first visiting it for the very first time. But this shrine is a shrine to Tempest, but it's made by the barbarians. And the reason for this is that 10 Towns has always had an uneasy relationship with the barbarians of the Ragged Glacier, that big glacier to the north and east. Uneasy because at times the barbarians will raid it. The barbarians are nomads, so they tend to move around with herds of elk and reindeer and things like that. But from time to time, they will decide to sack a town for good measure. The towns are represented in the books, the Barbarian Tribes are many. They follow various different animal species as totems. And some of them are more bloodthirsty than others, but even within the very bloodthirsty ones, there are individuals who feel one way or the other. And they come together at these moots, and they talk about what they should do and based on kind of who is in charge, there's this decision made as to how much to stick to the reindeer side of things or the let's go raid the 10 towns kind of things. At least that's the way it's presented in the book. And there's some good and bad about that, but probably you can see that it's not all bad. The barbarians were brought together by Wulfgar, himself a barbarian who, after a battle, was raised by, or for some time was sort of at servitude, indentured servitude, to the dwarves, to Bruenor Battlehammer. He realizes sort of the error of the more violent peoples that are currently leading the Barbarian Tribes. He goes off and kills that cool miniature I showed off. He kills Icing Death. Proves that he's worthy of leading the tribe. He also has this really cool magic hammer. That helps. Always start with the DM insane gift of the magic hammer that kills everything. He wins over the Barbarian Tribes, and they ally with 10 Towns, and just in the nick of time, save them from a Car Kessel. We'll get to the car. So, all of that to say that after the Battle of 10 Towns, a bunch of the barbarians actually settle in some of the towns, including Carconic. So this is representing how the barbarians have their influence in this town. And look, barbarians is the term that we use here. The Reghead peoples, we can go with a number of ways of looking at it. They're often simply referred to in this game and in other sources as being barbarians, though it's a bit of it has a problem, right, that term. But these people intermarry, the barbarians, the 10 towners, they intermarry and have relationships and all that. Let's take a quick jog around the town so you can kind of appreciate what it looks like. If you're going to run an Icewind Dale campaign, this is a good way to get a feel for what it might look like. And there's so much that's cool in this place in terms of how it's designed. I love the design of Icewind Dale in Neverwinter. And we're going to try to talk about all these different factors and still get out to see some fun, bad things in the cold. But let's get to factions. So you're probably all familiar in one way or another with games that introduce factions. 5th edition has started with a bunch of factions and then kind of toned those down. This provides us with 2 factions in the form of Bowen Brant, who leads the 10 Towns, and in a member of the Arcane Brotherhood, Anara the Cerulean. And each time that you come here, you can decide whether you want to ally with them. You can learn about what the Arcane Brotherhood are all about, these wizards. You can sign a contract with them and decide that you will work for them. You can also go to Bowen Brant and join the 10 Towns, and that's currently I'm signed up with, and work with them. So the 10 Towns is pretty clear. It's the people that live in these towns. They have this council and alliance, and they're looking for help with the various threats. And so if you're working with this side, that's kind of what you're doing. But what about if we're working with the Arcane Brotherhood? Let's talk about them. So we talked a little bit about the Arcane Brotherhood when we were talking about Valindra, because Valindra was part of the Arcane Brotherhood. That's how she started out before she became a lich. Valindra is, let's stick to the Arcane Brotherhood. So the Arcane Brotherhood, it began with the Netherese building the host tower of the Arcane, which is this huge, tall, magical tower. And at one point, it's built as a sort of beacon of magical power that holds at bay these, I forget what they're called, Faerun, something like that. They're sort of this ancient race that is kind of eating up all the magic and messing with the Netherese, and eventually they attack the Netherese, and so they're kind of the biggest enemies of the Netherese. And so the this tower is built as a way to hold them back and teleported, I believe, to just in the nick of time to escape to what later becomes Luskan. Luskan's sort of built around the ruins that are around this tower. And eventually very brave people go into the tower, including some famous people, and then some people take it over who become the Arcane Brotherhood. And they are kind of enigmatic wizards, just like you think wizards would be who go into a dark tower like this. Like, they're not nice, they want power, but they'll tell you how all the research they're doing is safe. They're right out of the movie Aliens. Yeah, we're just going to study this stuff, don't worry. So the Arcane Brotherhood are a big part of the Crystal Shard novel series, and what happens is that this group of Arcane Brotherhood people come in a merchant caravan, and they're making some trades and stuff like that before they head back down south to Luskan. And amongst the caravan are a wizard and his apprentice. And the apprentice is named Carkessel, and he is quite the weakling. He has a number of obvious character flaws. He's not good at magic at all. Tries to cast some sort of flaming thing and burns his fingers and that kind of thing. But he is convinced by the other wizards to murder his mentor. So he does that, despite the fact the mentor is like the only person that trusted him. And Carkessel then goes, yay, promote me. And they go, cool, we're going to leave you in the middle of the ice, and you're now going to die because you're a fool and you did what we wanted, which was to kill off our guy that was a competition to us. He feels terrible, and he's all whining, which is the large... If you were to watch a movie of a Carkessel, 99% of it would have a subtitle that says, indistinct whining. So Akar is sitting there whining in the middle of the ice, sort of slowly dying, and then he feels this strange warmth, because lo and behold, it just so happens, this super powerful artifact that couldn't be destroyed, it was thrown into the ice around Icewind Dale so that it wouldn't fall into bad hands. And sensing life, even though it sees that Carkessel is a total weakling, it decides to use him as its tool. And while Akar is no great mage, the artifact, which is known as the Crystal Shard or Crinshinaban, can take him over and manipulate him. And that's what begins to happen. Carkessel becomes manipulated by the Crystal Shard, becomes this horrible guy who decides to take over the 10 towns and then the world. And that is the biggest part of what happens at first. Now, he is defeated by, spoiler, Drizzt Do'Urden and the rest of the companions in various ways. Regis has a big part of it. And what happens is the Crystal Shard artifact has sort of built these enormous towers, and one in particular that a Carkessel's in. It looks like a huge, giant, sort of opalescent tower of glass, kind of like you see these formations here. When it explodes, the idea is that all these shards of it go flinging out into the ice, and in Legacy of Crystal Shard, this ice is sort of like growing the way like kind of cool rock crystals in the 80s. You know, you'd find that you could kind of add water and it'll just grow. And that's what's happening. This kind of weird, corrupt rock is growing, and you can use it, as you can see these dwarves doing, in a forge. If you specially prepare it, you can work it. Now, this term, black ice, is no longer used in 5th edition, it seems. We bring in a new concept in 5th edition. It is called Shardalin or Shardalin. And that is what's being, apparently, it looks like from the preview adventures, it looks like that's what's being discussed in the new adventure, Rime of the Frostmaiden. So what Shardalin is interesting because that is an older magic item name from AD&D days, which is an old magic substance that was naturally occurring, used by ancient progenitor races, but found by the Nether East. And it actually would sort of break easily, so you wouldn't mine it, but you could find it by mining. You just had to be really careful. The whole idea was that it acted like a spell scroll. You could chuck magic into it, and when you would crush it, the spell would be released, and this was greatly powerful. So, this is Barek Hammerstone. He's the dwarf who originally discovers black ice, and he's got armor made, all of it, and you can check with him every day, and he rewards you and gives you stuff. You help him, in the Neverwinter game, you help him get past the corrupting madness by taking a scroll and removing the enchantment from him. And a big part of what happens in this Neverwinter storyline is around the Shardalin deposits that exist, mining them, working with them, and all that. Let's see if we have any other... Oh, another neat thing in town is that you can go to Frozen Far expeditions, and over time you develop a relationship with a Ten of Swift, and you get stuff from them in exchange for investing. And this is done through this whole campaign system that exists in the game, so you kind of move up these things, but you get Barek's Ice Forge going, you invest in Frozen Far expeditions, and you invest in the Hook, Line, and Sinker Tavern. Let's go to the Tavern. There are a couple fun things in the Tavern. As I said before, you can invest, and Eglindar, the person who owns it, will reward you every day that you come visit. You also have a Yeti in a cage that you can feed it treats from a quest, and if it likes it, the Yeti comes with you. Kind of fun. You also get to see Jarl Axel here. Jarl Axel is based, when he's not in the Underdark, he is based in Luskan, but he has often ventured into Icewind Dale and often intermixed with the companions and become friend and enemy to Drizzt Do'Urden. So you meet him here on a quest, which is kind of fun. So you get to invest in these properties, and I want to talk about it because I think that's an awesome angle. If you're building a campaign, the idea that Frozen Far Expeditions, which supplies merchants, travelers, and adventurers with maps, with news, with gear, that you could invest in them, maybe using the Acquisitions Incorporated book to do so, downtime activities, things like that. Or you could invest in the Hook, Line, and Sinker Tavern or some other entity like that, in addition to forming alliances with groups like the Ten Towns Council and the Arcane Brotherhood. That's really cool. Like, those are great ideas. I love that aspect of it. So I wanted to highlight that aspect of this game. So let's take a look around and go to the other side of the town. We're leaving the docks, we're heading out towards the wilds. You can see that's Kelvin's cairn off in the distance there. We're leaving the town behind. And there are two areas to this, if I can line it up right, to this initial area, as you can see here on the map. So we've got Caer Konig, where we are currently in blue. We have Icewind Pass, that's where you begin your initial quests. And then you can go to Dwarven Valley. It deals more with the black ice. And eventually you do the whole Sea of Moving Ice track, and that's what we covered in the previous stream that talked about Storm King's Thunder. Storm King's Thunder took us to Bryn Shander, dealing with the Ring of, what's the name? The Ring of Frost. What's the magical item? I forget the name of it, but Ring of Warmth. Ring of Warmth. And around the giants trying to restore their lost kingdom through having that ring, and you go on this series of quests to these different areas. We're going to go to Icewind Pass and take a quick look around. While this is loading, if you have any questions, as always, hit me up in chat, on Twitter, or on the blog, alphastream.org. Let's sit at the campfire here that someone left nicely for us by this caravan outside the town, and let's take a look at the map. There's a lot going on here, right? This is a pretty busy town with a lot going on. Let's jump in on this heroic encounter of the prospectors. We'll drive through. We're going to run through this demonic escape. Maybe we can deal with the demonic escape. So, I'm not going to fight it, I'll just shove it. So, out of Abyss, the adventure, one of the things they did with it when they were presenting it in the world was to have intrusions of it into all of the aspects that had been built into Neverwinter. Not every single one, but most of the areas in Neverwinter received some touch from the abyssal forces coming in. So you see these rifts from the abyss, and you have cultists and demons that come through, and then you have to deal with that. But I don't want to spend 2 more minutes here, so I'm going to head out. But that's kind of one of the cool things that can happen. Let's see if the Prospectors event is still taking place. It is.
Prospectors from corrupted undead.
Although, looks like I'm all alone here. I was hoping some people would be doing this. This is one where you rescue people in cages from these wights. So, there are a lot of undead here. Look, I can save this person. And the undead are often linked to Shardalin. They are infused with it or corrupted by it. And these are the forces of people who used to fight in the Battle of the 10 Towns. Well, let's run around the area a bit, and then I'll show you that. So we've got a destroyed caravan here. As part of a quest, you can get Frost Giant axes and bring them to the forge. Around here. Pretty cool. Here's Frost Giants. They're neat. They're easier to defeat than they should be, but they're still pretty cool to get angry. They'll pound you and send you flying back every time they hit you. I always love that 4th edition style take on things. Smash you and pound you and build up big attacks. It's kind of cool. Drop a little smoke bomb. Pierce their armor. Yeah. Oh, feel the pain. Frost Giant Berserker doesn't know what hit him. And because I'm a rogue, let's go invisible. You can't see me. Oh yeah, good times. I've got helmets and axes and all kinds of fun. So, there's some neat stuff. There's winter wolves. The winter wolves will breathe on you. And they freeze you. Let's see if they do it. Yeah, there we go. Freezing breath coming my way. Oh, I'm turned to ice. Not cool at all. As a rogue, I have the ability to slip out of that kind of stuff. Just throwing daggers. And I can dodge a lot. Lots of fun. And look, another giant helmet. I'm gonna put it on a pike. So you get a sense for the environment. It's really cool. I love the view of this. Neat mountains to climb over. This is the kind of terrain I try to keep in mind when I'm creating an adventure or when I'm running a campaign. You know, the 3-dimensionality of it, the different features of it, ruins that you find, you know, a wrecked caravan. Here's some Yetis. These are kind of cool. They kind of power up and they storm through and beat you up, and it's kind of fun. Frost breath, they can really hurt you. They'll run you over if you give them half a chance. Pretty neat. I like those creatures a lot as in the tabletop version. Some more giants I'm going to run by. Let's go to the little town. So there's a small town here. Take a little shortcut here through these boughs of this tree. This is Frostmound Keep, and one of the things you do to keep the giants away is you put the helmets on these pikes to show that you mean war. I like the idea it's just the helmets you're putting on there. And that way they know you're serious and stay away from there. So there goes. That's the diplomacy check they're rolling with here. So there's a little keep here. You can make friends there. It's also worth noting, this is the module or advancement of Neverwinter that introduced player versus player. As if we look at the map, there are player versus player zone here, and then on the Dwarven Valley there's another one as well. Yes, I am a question as to whether I'm looking forward to Baldur's Gate. I am very much looking, I think you mean the Neverwinter expansion. I'm definitely looking forward to the expansion they just released for the Avernus content. If you're talking about Baldur's Gate 3, the video game, which you could also be meaning, yes, I'm very excited about that. I have not watched the latest trailer they did. I don't know if you did and how you liked that. That was, but the first view I saw that would look just supremely awesome. So that was great. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to go, we're in this cool kind of ice cavern here, which I think is a super dope place. Kind of go a little forward, we'll play some wolves here. Bring out some smoke bombs, make something vulnerable to the stun, and we'll take a little bit of a closer look. But I really like the way this is designed here. Is giants in this cavern with light coming up from below, or from above. Just great stuff to describe places like this to players when you're creating an environment. You know, neat ice cave like this makes me think of like Luke on Hoth, right? It could be frozen in that, hanging upside down. There's another thing to steal. Alright, we're going to go to Bigrin's Tomb. So this is a weekly quest you get to go and strike down Bigrin. It's also part of the storyline when you're first playing through. This is something that Neverwinter does all the time. They give you a first quest as part of the story, and then if you want to kind of grind out the campaign, you can come back and do it once a week. And we're going to go to Bigrin's Tomb. So who's Bigrin? So when Akar Kessel decides that he wants to use the Crystal Shard's power and attack the 10 towns, he sends a forward group to scout it out and sort of secure an initial area. And to keep that group in line, he sends the strongest, biggest frost giant in all of the Icewind Dale area, a frost giant named Bigrin. And Drizduardin and Wolfgar end up going into Bigrin's lair when they catch wind of what's going on. They don't actually understand the Carkessel side yet, but they know something's going on with like frost giants or somebody getting ready, goblins, to mount some sort of attack. And they go into this frost giant area and fight Bigrin, and they defeat him. And well, let's see what happens, because Carkessel may just have raised him from the dead. So here's the tomb. The idea is that the frost giants honored Bigrin by putting him in this frost giant tomb. So we're now in this big tomb underground, under the ice. I love this idea, the torches that are magically burning and frost giant bones. This little shortcut we can take. Got these bones, the cairns. This is sweet. You got all kinds of undead here. Look at all that. That's great. So cool looking. And talk about the lamp decor. I mean, that's what you want in a place, you know? Really cool, strange thing. Oh yeah, let's talk about the undead. When they die, they release a freezing blast around them. And they explode. And so you have to dodge them. Very 4th edition there. Some of the worst things about the 4th edition version of D&D, worst I mean as in like, I love this by the way, is that auras stacked. So if you had creatures that gave off like a cold aura and it did 5 damage at the start of your turn, like inside that aura, and you had 4 of these creatures and you're in 4 auras, that was 20 points of damage. You multiplied it, or you added it together really. So that was just super deadly. And these chillborn zombies that would explode were super brutal between aura and exploding. It's good times. I'm going to dodge out of that. I'm going to take down this Deathlock White. Deathlock White will summon more undead. So should have targeted them early on, but I didn't. She brought some more zombies in the way. So it goes. Defeating them opens up this cool door. Look at that door made of bone. Very cool. Not that my halfling couldn't slip through it, but still pretty cool. So we continue on down. Look at this place. It's so neat. The hanging ice over there. The grape hounds. Very neat. Super cool. And all this kind of weird light. I would love to just write box stacks for some of these environments in this area. This game has some really, really great environment. More Chillborn zombies. We're gonna take them down. We're gonna control the play out of the freezing zone. Now, here we go. Scalpel Frost Giant. This is not Bigrin yet, but this is the concept. And this guy can pound. He's no joke. I mean, he's a little easy now that my character's very strong, but back when we would first play this, you needed to group up and take on this giant, because it was way hard. I love all these little touches. The helmet, the side, the idea of, you see all these guys that don't rise up and attack you. And then you get to this area where there's this ritual being done by other undead to raise that giant. And he rises up and attacks you. Very cool. By the way, that little shield over there means my armor's kind of temporarily cracked. It'll pass. It'll get better. So here's the ritual being done to please Bigrin. The biggest of all the frost giants lives on in undeath. And these wights are guarding him at the command of a Carkessel. I guess they're completing the ritual to raise him. Either way. Yeah. And they're surviving towards undead. I don't like them dead. Alright, if I defeat the last of the wights, Bigrin's gonna rise. Sweet! Look at that. He's pretty cool looking. He also used to be just tremendously difficult back in the day. Let's probably not kill him too quickly. Let's look at that. Cool ice attack. The Scalpel hounds will freeze you in place. So if you see, look, I got stunned and iced for a second by the attack of it. He has these big, massive bounce. Oh, it just drops me to the ground. It's looking really bad for me. Oh, that's really rough. But I'm going to summon a horde of that. Like, and I'm going to go invisible. Winter Wolf. Oops, dodge. Throw daggers. Oh, I'm actually kind of hurt. Let's take a healing potion. In this game, you can equip healing potions, and you can take them. There are also a few, sometimes healing powers that are mostly just on the classes that are specifically meant to heal. The healing potions and similar things have a refresh time, so you can see a little timer there on in this area over here. And I'm being cheap and using the free ones I get every day. There are more powerful healing potions you can equip, in case you're curious about how it works. So I have defeated Bigrin, and now I can come here and claim my reward, which includes some of the Shardalin and some coins that are used by currency in Karakonig, and then the currency of Astral Diamonds, which is the strangest currency for a D&D game to use, but okay. So that's a little look at this. This gives us a feel for what's taking place with the start of the Icewind Dale campaign in Neverwinter. We are fighting these undead that are related. Ooh, the Remoras. Let's go fight the Remoras. This is super sweet. Alright, hold that thought. So one of my favorite monsters, I have a little bit of a reputation for the Flump, and there are so many reasons to love a Flump. I mean, what's more huggable than a Flump? But when it comes to just like things you want to fight, Remoras is one of my favorite creatures. And I love when things that I really dig are awesome to fight and play in different editions. Oh, good, it hasn't started yet. So that's the Remoras in the center there with that blue kind of light around it, and then there are smaller ones around it. Remoras does have young versions. These were in 4th edition, they're also in 5th edition. What I love about the Remoras, it's the coolest thing when you're a bad DM, right? The Remoras, when you hit it, when a player or character hits it, it does damage because it's so superheated when you do melee damage. That's awesome because I don't even have to roll to hit you. You can hit me and you take damage. Perfect when I'm having a bad dice day. And so the Remoras, it has this superheated thing. It also can bite you and swallow you and put you in its superheated stomach. And swallow is just one of the absolute favorite things that a D&D game can give to me. I love when I swallow a character. It's just the best. You're feeling pretty bad about your Eldritch Blast. Yes, Remoras are a reason not to specialize in fire magic or ice magic. Let me just see, I should probably... Oh, wow, that did a lot of damage to me. Why did I take that much damage? Wow, I nearly died there. You know what, let me check. Oh, I don't have my companion out. So, let's go. I wasn't fully operational there. Let's try this again, so you can see how much difference gear or companion makes in the game. Let's see how this goes. Let's see if I die quite so horribly. Now the big Remoras is going to come up, so I better dodge that. See that big area of like ice. These Remoras are really cool. They do these like fiery areas, and there's going to be a huge zone of fire around you. Look at that, the breathing fire in 3 directions. Really, really cool. So you got the little ones are doing this red tracking thing, where whenever I stop, it's going to create that pool of bad fire stuff. And then the big one is just going to murder me with the other attacks. I should probably like get some other people here. We're going to go to... It's really hard to not die when you want to type. So let's run away while I type here. See if more people show up to fight the Remoras. But I do like this guy, so I'm going to try to fight it a little bit more. Where is it? There it is. I probably died, but it's so cool. That is really neat. So, one interesting thing. So Merrick, whoa, gosh, that's a lot of damage. I'm gonna die. I've done no damage to the Remoras, and it's just murdering me. Okay, that's fair. You know, if you're gonna die, let's die to Remoras. Merrick mentioned this kind of immunity resistance type thing that most editions provide here. I'm gonna bravely run away. Neverwinter is really strange in that nothing has resistances. It just is the way it is. You can deal fire damage to a fire elemental, you can deal ice damage, it does not matter, damage is damage, which I thought was really interesting for being a D&D game. At least I'm going to fight the Remoras. Someone's fighting this little heroic thing here. Alright, well let's go on to tour. Wait, people are coming. No, they're going. Somebody's got to want to fight the Remoras. So this is Kelvin's cairn here. No, it's part of it. It's one of the peaks. You can climb some kind of neat mountain peaks and get to a very high area and overlook the area. So let's take a look at one of these scrying stones. Give it a little picturesque look. The Ebon Frost Scree. So this is the player versus player area. You can go down that ramp without that big bridge, that issue. The idea is these are old dwarven ruins. And this is where you produce the Shardalin, or where they're mining the Shardalin. You can see those big deposits of black stone. And so when you're doing player versus player, you're either on the Arcane Brotherhood side or on the Ten Towns side, fighting for control over these resources. And that's what's happening when you take over different zones and do all that kind of typical player versus player stuff. Then this area over here is the Barbarian area. They are also experimenting with black ice or Shardalin. That's why you can see straight behind me here, there is that area that has kind of a blue glow. Maybe we'll go take a look at that because that's kind of fun. I'm going to stop the stream soon-ish. I'm just going to go to the very peak here. I'm going to show you the Barbarian area, and then next time we'll do the Dwarven Kingdoms and talk a little bit more about some of the other aspects of Icewind Dale. But it's kind of fun. I like the idea of having to climb up to like a top peak for some reason. It's kind of neat. There's monsters here tend to have little zones, so there are a lot of Yetis around here. See if I can minimize my falling damage. It's hard to die from falling damage in Neverwinter, though you can do it if you try hard enough. So all the barbarians come around here. They will walk sort of back and forth doing patrols, or they've got little tents and things like that, encampments that they've got set up. Again, they are nomadic peoples, so they don't generally do, you know, they're all simple kind of tent-like structures because they need to move. Of course, some of that is the sort of idea of barbarians as primitive peoples, etc., etc. There's that angle to it. You know what I haven't, there it is. So let's take this group out here so I can show you another thing. The bear riders are cool. They will run you over as well when they're not throwing spears. And what I'm going to do here is show you this. So this is one of the neat aspects of the game. You find these deposits of the Shardalin, and you can mine it with a pick that you get, and one of the initial quests teaches you how to do this. And when you do this, it's part of a weekly quest, but you kind of create a whole bunch of it. And when the game first came out, they had this idea. They were like, it's going to be so awesome for people to mine this stuff over and over again, and then make armor and weapons with it and empower with it. And what we'll do so they do it all the time is we'll have it degrade. So you'll like have this cool item, and then a week later it won't be so cool, so you have to go back and mine ice. And turns out that that's not that fun for players to do, so don't use that in your campaign in any excessive way, because people actually want to play Dungeons & Dragons instead of sitting there pounding away at rock like that. Turns out games are weird, people are weird. But that's what's going on there. Is there are these kind of deposits, and you mine them to kind of complete quests and to empower your gear. The empowering gear thing has gone away. They realized nobody was having fun, and so that got removed mostly, though versions of it appear in other modules as well. They do, by the way, use the term module for their different releases, which is kind of cool. So this gives you kind of a good feel for what it looks like to come to this area. Has a little heroic encounters around that you can do to save merchants and things like that. This is the PvP area. If I cross it, I'll be flagged as being part of my team, and people can then attack me in player versus player. Until I do that, they can't. But let's live dangerously. Let's go into the 10-town zone. There are these kind of neat areas here you can visit. There are huge deposits of the Shardalin here, so you can mine more of it here and complete quests doing so. If this was it's not right now not an event time, but if there were an event, then I could like capture this location for my team, do various things like that. In addition to players, there are NPCs, like that's a Brotherhood rogue. So I'm on 10 Town's team, so that's an enemy. But then this is 10 Town's NPC, so they are on my side. They will battle for me if someone else were to come around. So that's kind of how it works. But you get an idea of this, the cool look of the Shardalin. Yeah, it's pretty, you know, this is neat looking. Neat stuff. We're going to see more of this type of art when we get into a Kessel and the finale of this part of the campaign. We'll do that in a different session. It's kind of neat just to show you what this looks like. I love ice. I mean, it's funny. I really love sand and I really love ice. Like, both of those are just things that I just super enjoy playing with in terms of the environment. I find it really fascinating. So we did, when Rimefire was announced, I spoke to Eric Mengi and kind of agreed that it would be really fun to make another supplement. We wrote Jungle Treks together when Tomb of Annihilation was released. So we're going to write an Ice Treks, and I have a number of ideas that I can't share yet, but that are a lot of fun about what to do with ice environment to create kind of neat scenarios. So usually this Remoras fight is very popular, but I think everybody's off in Avernus driving war machines, so which I probably should go do as well. So yeah, there you have it. This is what it's like to travel into Icewind Dale. Really fun area of yeah, Ice Treks. We are next time going to talk about a lot more of the lore around Kessel, around the Shardalin corruption, and take a look at how the dwarves play into that. Yeah, if you have questions, if you have specific things you want to see about Icewind Dale, let me know. Oh, and I'm going to talk about one more thing before I go, and that is Gen Con Online. I'm going to be a DM for Gen Con Online again. You can sign up at heraldsguild.com. You will find there the link to Gen Con Online if you go to the Heralds Guild site, heraldsguild.com. And when you go there to the signups, you'll see the link right there, big banner. When you go to it, you can sign up to run different games and sign up as a DM. You can also play them, and what that allows you to do, maybe it's been taken down. Let me see it now. Let me see it. No, I think it's still there. Just clicking on it, the wrong thing or something. But yeah, so you can sign up to run games, and you can get a feel for what's being run there on this image here. So you cannot sign up. Well, can you sign up for me? So thank you. That's very nice of you to say. I'm going to be running games in Spanish, and I'm going to primarily be running the Icewind Dale adventures, which I ran for D&D Live. I might end up running some other things as well, depending on sort of where there's interest by players to play games in Spanish. You can sign up as a DM in English, of course. You can also sign up if you speak French, if you speak Portuguese, and I heard that if you want to sign up in Italian, you can also add that language, a note about that in the notes, and you just simply state what you want to sign up for here, or leave it in the notes. There's a notes area here. So I think I'm going to end up running. It was amazing for D&D Live to run in Spanish. That was a really, really fun, awesome players, and I really was surprised at how many people were doing that. So I'm going to try to do that again, but I've also asked a lot of other DMs to sign up and DM in Spanish. So we're hopefully going to have a bunch of games in Spanish, and some of them, the players were actually Portuguese, so they may instead run in Portuguese, so I'm hoping that's available. So we're going to try to increase the breadth of international offerings for different online conventions. We started with D&D Live, and we're going to do it with Gen Con Online as well. I mean, I love DMing in all languages. DMing is DMing. So I probably will, for later conventions, do this as well. It's no secret that COVID is not at all slowing up the United States, and so the full expectation is that all cons, even if by some reason they end up being physical, which they probably won't be anytime soon, will have an online component. So kind of no matter what, you can plan on all the big future conventions having an online component no matter what for the foreseeable future. And so if I'm not DMing in person, I'll be DMing online, and I hope you will consider DMing or at least playing and being part of that. Yeah, let me know what you're interested in doing for Icewind Dale, if there are any topics you want me to cover in preparation for the Rime of the Frostmaiden. And thanks to all the folks who came out today. I really appreciate it. And it's fun to be back streaming. Thank you, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.